For more on this, let's speak to Dr. Westen Shilaho, who is with the International Relations Department at Wits University. A very good evening to you, Dr. Shilaho. Thanks very much for your time. But how big an issue has been immigration in this UK election?
Thank you so much for the invite, and good evening to your viewership. Yes, it has been an issue, because remember, this was top priority for the immediate Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and he's been pursuing this issue since 2022, that asylum seekers who are crossing the English Channel from a safe country, in this particular instance, France, would have to be taken to Rwanda and be processed from there. And those who are successful, they will have to settle in Rwanda. Those who are not would have to apply for refugee status in Rwanda on other grounds, or apply to be settled in a safe third country. And he had vowed to implement this Rwanda scheme, despite spirited opposition from the unions and from charities, and despite the ruling by the UK Supreme Court that the scheme, the policy was unconstitutional. It breached the UK Human Rights Act. It breached the European Union Convention and other international laws and norms. And therefore, it has been polarizing, but as it were, Keir Starmer has lived to his promise. As you've heard from that clip, he didn't believe that this would be a solution to the refugee problem or the immigration problem in the UK. As he described it, it was dead from the beginning, and it would not have been a deterrent against immigration from France or other countries using the so-called small boats. Now, Nigel Farage, just to add before, is an ultra-nationalist. If some of your viewers remember, he was one of the leading campaigners for Brexit. So he's just living true to his ideology. Thank you.
But then, Labour did say or promise, in the run-up to the election, that they'll do away with this, And here they are, they have won by a landslide. Does that settle the question?
Well, it doesn't, because the immigration question will not disappear overnight because Labour has won the elections. But at least that was one of the campaign pledges, and they have lived to it, they have scrapped it, they're not going forward with it. And they think there's a better way of addressing the migration problem in the UK, as opposed to taking this, which to critics, including leading lights in the UK and human rights activists and bodies and charities and unions, didn't make sense. It really went, it flew in the face of basic human rights conventions, internationally and even within the UK itself, despite Parliament under Rishi Sunak pushing ahead and, in fact, surprisingly enough, urging the UK courts to ignore the Human Rights Act and other basic conventions that prohibit torture and forced disappearances, things that were feared some of these asylum seekers could face in Rwanda, a country that does not have, a sterling record vis-a-vis human rights.
Now, if as you say, the election doesn't settle, the issue, does Labour have a plan?
Well, time will tell. Time will tell, because this is an issue that is international. It's not an issue that one single country can resolve. The people are crossing the English Channel are coming from countries that are facing lots of socioeconomic and political upheavals, political instability, loss of economic opportunities, political persecution. There are a whole host of issues. And therefore, the push factors have to be addressed. You don't just look at the symptom, the end result. And therefore, I'm afraid the conservatives who are trying to treat the symptom and forgetting about the root cause of this immigration crisis, as it were.
But, I mean, beyond the issue of immigration, would Labour be in a position to endear Britain among the world's nations, especially developing nations and Africa in particular, in ways that perhaps the Conservatives haven't done over the past 15 years?
Hopefully, you know, politicians across the world, they campaign in poetry, but governance is like prose. The nuts and bolts of governance, not easy. It's easier to promise things, but when you get hold of the levers of power, you realize that delivering on those promises is a different ballgame altogether. But what I can say is that at least they appreciate that this Rwanda scheme, as it's been referred to until now, was patronizing. The Conservatives were patronizing, particularly to immigrants, majority of whom are from Africa and other countries from Asia, as it were, who have been at the receiving end of, as it were, a very asymmetrical global power distribution, such that the plunder of resources in some of these countries, interference in the sovereignty of some of these countries, and economic policies by international agencies based in the West have been contributory to the hemorrhage, as it were, the refugee crisis, the people exiting these countries. And I think the Labour Party is appreciative of that the UK and other leading powers across the world stand indicted and are also incriminated in some of these crises, part of which is the refugee crisis.
And Rwanda, of course, was making a little bit of money out of this, wasn't it?
Yes, of course. There was some money that had been, advanced to Rwanda before this scheme hit a brick wall. I think to the tune of 270 sterling pounds, and in the next 5 or so years, that money was supposed to ratchet up to 370 sterling pounds. So, well, they were making some money, but I don't think the Rwanda government would look at it like that, because it would be extremely egregious, to make money out of this, as it were, humanitarian crisis. And given that Kagame, the president of Rwanda, has been hailed as one of the transformative leaders across Africa, much as critics would differ. So it was odd that he could be used, to as it were, solve this intractable refugee problem.
Why do you think they did it? They agreed to do it?
Well, there was some money coming their way. Secondly, I think Kagame has gotten along with the West over the years, and they've come to his aid in terms of funding his programs at home. It's been hailed as one of the leading lights across the continent. So I think he's their dependable ally. They really get along on almost all fronts, despite some noise here and there, as it were, over his human rights record.
Dr. Westen, Shilaho, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for the invite.
It's, of course, with the International Relations Department at Wits University.